You feel it before you can explain it. A stranger's eyes land on you from across the train car and your shoulders tighten. Someone stands too close behind you in line and your heart rate climbs before you've even turned around. You haven't been threatened. Nothing has actually happened. So why does your body react like it has? The honest answer is stranger than social anxiety or being self-conscious. Your brain is running a survival program that is hundreds of thousands of years old, and it was never built for sidewalks, offices, or video calls. It was built for open grassland, where being watched usually meant only one thing. Let's reframe what's actually happening. For most of human history, your ancestors lived in small bands on the African savanna, completely exposed. No walls, no locked doors, no streetlights. In that world, the sensation of being watched was rarely neutral. It was a warning, a predator sizing you up, a rival group scouting your camp. Being seen unexpectedly by something you couldn't identify was one of the most dangerous experiences a person could have. So evolution did something efficient. It built a shortcut. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer, HRDY, has argued that early humans lived under constant, low-level predation pressure, and that this pressure shaped not just behavior but perception itself. Your ancestors who reacted instantly to the feeling of unseen eyes, who tensed, scanned, and prepared to move, were more likely to survive long enough to have children. The ones who shrugged it off were sometimes simply removed from the gene pool. Over enough generations, that reflex became permanent, not a choice. A default setting. Here's where it gets stranger. Your brain doesn't actually need to see a predator to trigger this response. It just needs to detect the pattern of being watched. Psychologist Nicholas Humphrey proposed that humans evolved a highly sensitive social radar, an ability to detect gaze direction and intention almost instantly, because in ancestral environments, correctly reading who was watching you and why could mean the difference between an ally and a threat. That radar is still running. It doesn't know the difference between a lion in the grass and a coworker glancing up from their desk. Think about what actually happens in your body during that moment. Your pupils may dilate. Your palms might sweat. Cortisol and adrenaline surge, preparing your muscles for sudden movement. This is not an overreaction. This is your amygdala, the brain's ancient threat detection center, doing exactly the job it evolved to do: react first, ask questions later. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux has shown that the amygdala can trigger a fear response before the rest of your brain has even consciously processed what you're looking at. You feel unsettled before you know why. Consider how fast this actually happens. Researchers estimate that a threat signal can reach the amygdala in a fraction of a second, arriving well before it reaches the parts of your brain responsible for conscious reasoning. That means your body has already begun preparing to run, freeze, or fight before you've formed a single coherent thought about what's going on. Isn't it strange that the most primal part of your mind gets the first vote every single time? Now here's the twist. Being watched wasn't only dangerous in ancestral life. It was also constantly socially evaluative. In small hunter-gatherer bands of maybe 30 to 50 people, everyone knew everyone. Reputation wasn't an abstract concept. It was survival currency. If the group saw you as lazy, dishonest, or unreliable, you could lose access to food, protection, or a mate. Evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar has argued that human social cognition evolved specifically to track reputation within these tight-knit groups, because the cost of being judged and rejected was often as lethal as the cost of being hunted. Being watched didn't just mean predator. It also meant judged. Being cast out of the group wasn't a bruised ego. It was often a death sentence. Alone, without the band's shared food, shared defense, and shared knowledge of the land, an exiled person's odds of surviving a single season dropped sharply. So your ancestors developed an intense, almost obsessive sensitivity to how others perceived them. Every glance mattered. Every whisper mattered. What did you expect your brain to inherit from that kind of pressure, if not a hair-trigger alarm for being observed? That's why the feeling shows up in such oddly modern situations. Public speaking, job interviews, posting something online and waiting for a reaction. None of these involve any physical danger at all, but your ancestral brain doesn't process audience as harmless. It processes audience as my entire future in this group is being decided right now. Your palms sweat before a presentation for the same root reason they sweated 300,000 years ago outside a firelit camp. The stakes just moved from your body to your reputation. This is also why surveillance, even when you know it's just a camera, feels different from true privacy. Studies on what researchers call the watching eyes effect have repeatedly found that simply displaying an image of eyes, not a real person, not a real threat, changes how people behave. People litter less. People are more honest. People even donate more to an unmonitored coffee fund when a poster of eyes hangs nearby instead of a poster of flowers. Something in your ancestral wiring cannot fully distinguish a symbol of being watched from the real thing. Your brain treats the pattern as real, because for almost all of human history, it always was. Think about your own daily life for a moment. How often do you straighten your posture the instant you sense someone behind you? How often do you feel a flicker of unease scrolling past a photo you didn't know was taken? None of that is random. Every one of those moments is your social radar firing exactly as designed, still convinced that being seen carries consequences. This same wiring explains why silence on the other end of a call feels worse than an angry reply. Silence gives your ancestral brain nothing to read. No expression, no posture, no signal about intent. And an unreadable observer was, for most of human history, far more dangerous than an obviously hostile one, because you at least knew where a hostile one stood. Psychologist Paul Ekman spent decades studying how humans read facial expressions across cultures and found the same core signals of fear, anger, and contempt recognized almost universally. That universality is not an accident. It reflects just how critical it once was to correctly decode the intentions of anyone whose eyes were on you, and how costly it was to get that reading wrong. Consider, too, why a dimly lit street at night feels far more unsettling than the same street at noon. Darkness strips away your ability to see who is watching you back. For a creature that evolved this entire warning system around visual detection, an environment where you can be seen but cannot see is close to a nightmare scenario. Your pulse quickens not because anything has changed about the pavement beneath your feet, but because your ancestral brain has flagged an old, familiar imbalance. Something might be watching, and you have no way to watch back. Modern life adds a layer your ancestors never had to deal with at all. Today you can be watched by thousands of people at once and never know a single one of their faces. A comment section. A video with a view count climbing by the second. Your ancestral brain has no category for audience of strangers you will never meet, so it defaults to the only script it has. Treat every observer as a potential member of your tribe, someone whose judgment could change your standing, your safety, even your survival. That is why a single unkind comment from an anonymous stranger can sting far more than logic says it should. Your body is reacting as if the whole group just turned to look at you. There is a reason this feeling rarely fades with reassurance alone. Telling yourself it's just a camera or it's just an audience speaks to the newest, most recently evolved layer of your brain, the part capable of abstract reasoning. But the alarm itself is generated by a much older layer, one that doesn't listen to logic, because for the overwhelming majority of the time this circuit existed, logic was too slow to matter. If something was watching you from the tall grass, the ancestors who paused to reason it through were, quite simply, the ones who didn't pass on their genes. So what do you do with a threat detection system built for lions and rival tribes, now firing off in elevators and open-plan offices? You can't switch it off, but you can recognize it for what it is. The tightening in your chest when someone stares too long isn't a personal flaw. It's a message from deep in your evolutionary past, still trying to protect you from a world that mostly no longer exists. Your ancestors survived because they took that feeling seriously. You don't have to fear it. You just have to understand where it's coming from. Some researchers have even proposed that this hypersensitivity to observation shaped our capacity for self-awareness itself. Philosopher and cognitive scientist Nicholas Humphrey suggested that imagining how others see you, essentially running a model of an observer inside your own head, gave early humans a survival edge, letting them predict social reactions before they happened. In other words, part of your ability to reflect on yourself at all may have grown directly out of your ancestors' need to constantly guess who was watching and what that watcher intended. The unease you feel isn't a glitch sitting on top of your intelligence. It may be one of the very things that helped build it. There is something oddly comforting in that. The racing heart, the sudden self-consciousness, the urge to check who's behind you, none of it means something is wrong with you. It means your biology is doing exactly what kept your ancestors alive for hundreds of thousands of years. The mismatch isn't in your nervous system. It's in the world around it, a world that changed far faster than your instincts ever could. Cities, cameras, and comment sections all arrived in an evolutionary blink. Your amygdala never got the memo, and honestly, why would it? It has no way of knowing the difference between a predator's gaze and a stranger's glance, because for nearly all of the time it took to build that circuit, there was no difference worth knowing. Next time you feel someone's eyes on you, and your body reacts before your mind catches up, remember what's really happening. It isn't the modern world unsettling you. It's an ancient one quietly checking in, still convinced it's protecting you from something in the grass.